My pleasure, excuse me, to introduce Carol Merna to you all today, although I think she knows more than half of the people. Carol began serving as Chief Executive Officer for the Center for Prevention of Abuse in March 2015. Before joining CFPA, Carol served the 18th Congressional District for more than 25 years, working in and overseeing the constituent and community service operation for 3 members of Congress. During her tenure in the congressional office, she enjoyed doing advocacy work, building strong and lasting professional relationships, and providing leadership. She enjoys doing those same things with those whom CFPA serves, those who provide support, and people in organizations who share CFPA's meaningful vision and mission for peace. Under Carol's direction since 2015, she has successfully led the organization through the state of Illinois' longest budget impasse while increasing its fundraising revenue. She has strengthened CFPA's relationships with elected officials and policymakers and created a new department dedicated to serving victims of human trafficking. Carol has been awarded many awards, including the 25 Women in Leadership, IBI Magazine's Woman of Influence, Federal Executive of the Year, Illinois Rural Partner of the Year, 40 Leaders Under 40, the 2019 Athena International Woman of the Year from the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce. She was a national finalist in Nexstar Broadcasting's nationwide Remarkable Women campaign in 2020. She was awarded 40 Leaders Under 40 Alumnus of the Year by Peoria Magazines in 2020, and she won the 2001 Business Professions Award from the Women's Fund and the Community Foundation of Central Illinois. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
Everybody. Hey, Carol. It's good to see you all. It's been a while since I've been here. I'm glad to be here as a fellow Rotarian because I haven't been to my own Rotary Club for a little while. So this brings me back into good graces, right? Yes. So, okay. All right. So yeah. So let me take a moment to say thank you for having me on this beautiful day. Thank you for the warm cup of chili, Jim. It was excellent and appropriate for the first day of fall. And I want to say how much I appreciate so many of you as friends and supporters of the Center for Prevention of Abuse. And let me give a shout out to 2. Sean Newell, who is not here, who got formally razzed by me last night for missing today, but for good reason. Sean is our current board president at the Center for Prevention of Abuse. So proud to be a friend of his, but also so proud to serve under his leadership. And then also Andrea Totora, who is our most recent joining member of our board of directors. Our governing body does a yeoman's task on many occasions to make sure that they fulfill their fiduciary responsibility, but also just to provide the support and leadership that we need. So very badly every day, not only at our high impact human service organization, but in the community. So and then I also want to introduce Josh Cox, who is with me today. And Josh is our development director. We've never had a development director before. So he's teaching me how to have a development director. And please give a warm welcome to Josh. Who could be easily swayed to perhaps be a member of this organization. So, funds in the boot, because I am thankful for those 3 folks that I just named very much. So they are good news to me. I want to give a slight warning before I speak, because I'm going to offer up, I'm going to mention several different types of trauma. And trauma is a very sensitive and personal topic for many people. And I'm not just here to inform, I'm here to be of service. And if anyone is uncomfortable, they are more than welcome to quietly slip out or grab your phone and play a game of Wordle. You will not hurt my feelings, but most importantly, you are welcome to reach out to the Center for Prevention of Abuse or to me directly if we can be helpful, or if you know someone that needs a little aid in finding some healing. So please know that. As we begin, Let me share a little bit about the Center for Preventive Abuse, our history, what we do to help people find a pathway to peace. Do I just click the? Jeff?
I got you.
Okay. Glad you're here.
Maybe.
Hi, we're the Center for Prevention of Abuse. Our mission is to help all people live free from violence and abuse. We believe everyone deserves peace, every day, everywhere, anytime. At home, in the workplace, at school, and out in the community. We provide free and confidential services to all survivors of abuse, and we offer prevention education to help teach young people how to stop abuse before it begins. We are advocates for survivors of abuse. We are therapists, caseworkers, counselors, speakers, trainers, crisis managers, leaders, and community educators. We are here even when it's hard to talk. When you're ready, so are we. Free and confidential services, because we believe you and we don't put a price on healing.
I just love that. Thanks, Lord. So let's talk just for a couple of minutes about the Center for Prevention of Abuse. I think everyone could have some buy-in to this vision. We have a vision for a peaceful community. And as many of you know, a vision is infinite, something that we work on forever and ever. And it's something that we are committed to playing our part in seeing that we can have a peaceful community. Our mission is to help all people live free from violence and abuse. So if anyone comes to us, regardless of age, regardless of gender identity, of race, of profession, of culture, they are welcome to receive care at the Center for Prevention of Abuse. So we've been around for nearly 50 years. It's a long time. It started as a phone. There were a group of people that decided that sexual assault was a tremendous issue in the community and that there needed to be a rape crisis hotline. So they actually opened a phone line, and there were 3 people that began their volunteer mission of helping people who had become victims of sexual assault. And we have grown into the only agency in the state that has all of the sanctioned services we do under one roof. So that crisis hotline continues today. It is a 24/7 hotline that is staffed by a human being in Peoria that will walk you through whatever it is that you're going through at the time. We also have 6 locations. Our main campus, as we call it, is here in Peoria, just off of Sheridan. We have another emergency shelter in Pekin called Carroll House of Hope. We're in the 3 county courthouses, Peoria, Tazewell, and Woodford counties, for orders of protection. And then we also have a training annex where we also see people who are sentenced to us because they have been convicted of some type of interpersonal violence or abuse. And they see us for a 26-week course on accountability and responsibility. And that's a difficult one for us to measure, but we do have some pretty great outcomes with that program. It just is part of our holistic approach. So our core responsibilities are these. These are significant for us, but it is who we are. We have 2 emergency shelters for domestic violence. We're still the rape crisis center for the area. We have a very large department for prevention education, which makes me very happy because that is our main effort to help stop abuse before it starts. We're in all of the Peoria public schools and outlying areas as well. And last year we reached 38,000 students. We care for folks who are victims of elder abuse, which is called our adult protective services, because that also includes adults living with disabilities and self-neglect. But these are tremendous responsibilities. We care for about 6,000 people a year just in this central Illinois area. We cover Peoria, Tazewell, and Woodford counties for all of our services. For adult protective services and a couple of our smaller programs, we expand into Fulton, Marshall, and Stark counties. And then our human trafficking services department covers 46 counties. And we are the only provider downstate that provides beds, funded beds, because we're funded by the federal government and partner with the FBI and Homeland Security and others to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to not only care for survivors of human trafficking, of which there are many in Central Illinois, but also to educate. Okay, here we go. So today I'm going to talk about something a little different. Normally we do an agency overview and I'll spend quite a bit of time talking about human trafficking, and I am glad to answer any questions that you might have once we get to that point. But we've done that before for Rotary North. So I know that many of you have heard that talk about the impactful work that our team does and has done for that stretch of nearly 50 years. So during those conversations, we often quickly mention some of our smaller, lesser known departments. And even though those smaller departments might be a byproduct, they are no less important than the work our agency does for those larger departments that address all of those core responsibilities. All of those areas always carry the Center for Prevention of Abuse's mission in mind. So thank you for allowing me a few minutes today to talk about something a little bit different. I want to talk about the difficult existence that many children live every day, and the Center for Prevention of Abuse's work to help those very young children and their families find peace. The agency has an important program, and it's a derivative of our larger therapy program, where we have almost a dozen master's level therapists. But this program is called Safe from the Start. Safe from the Start was created in 2001. And in Illinois, it was from a working group spearheaded by the Illinois Attorney General, who recommended selecting some demonstration sites to develop and implement and evaluate comprehensive community models that help young children affected by violence. And when I say young, I mean birth through 5. So quite unique in that sense. The Center for Prevention of Abuse was selected as one of the original demonstration sites to develop and to implement and to evaluate comprehensive community models and to help these very small children. As you can see, there are currently, well, you can't really see because there's not 9 dots up there, but there are 9 such programs in the state of Illinois that continue today. 6 are clustered in the greater Chicagoland area, and 3 are considered to be downstate. Although you can clearly see that the real downstate is grossly underserved, because that gap is the result of the nearly 2-year state budget impasse that essentially defunded Safe from the Start for all of us. So we were able to carry it for a while, and then the uncertainty set in, and we knew that we needed to, much to my displeasure, create a bit of a hiatus for part of the program. However, when the state budget was finally resolved, we were able to resume with no issue. But one of the greatest costs of that political squabble was the loss of the Southern Illinois Safe from the Start program that was never able to recover. Politics have consequences. The goal of Safe from the Start program is to identify, to assess, and to provide services for these young children, again, birth through 5, and to their siblings and to their caregivers. These are young people who have been exposed to violence. Could be in their home, watching a parent be abused by another, or it could be in the community. They could be affected by age-inappropriate video games or movies. It could be a fight that they've witnessed in the neighborhood or at school, or it could be a shooting that they've witnessed. It all affects children. The Safe from the Start program is unique in that the abuse doesn't have to be physical abuse on them. It could be an emotional assault, which is often an invisible wound, at least for a while. So let's take a brief pause from the Safe from the Start program, and I want to talk about the movement that first brought attention to just how deeply children suffer when they're exposed to things like aggression and various forms of brutality. Nearly 30 years ago, the Centers for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente discovered an exposure that dramatically increased the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. In high doses, It affects brain development and the immune system and the hormonal system, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. People who are exposed to this in very high doses have triple the lifetime risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and a 20-year difference in life expectancy. How major is that? The exposure I'm talking about is not a strain of bacteria, and it's not a pesticide. The exposure is childhood trauma. So what kind of distress or trauma are we talking about here? It's not failing a test in school or an argument with a friend or losing a football game. We're talking about hazards that are so severe, so pervasive, that they literally get under our skin and change our personal composition. They change our physiology. Childhood trauma can include things like abuse or neglect, or even exposure to violence at home or in the community. This discovery was and still is revolutionary. And it seems logical to me to assume that the need for the Safe from the Start program was initially derived from what was learned from this study. This study is called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, or ACEs. And it was established by Dr. Vince Felitti, who worked for Kaiser, and Dr. Bob Anda, who worked for the CDC. And together they asked nearly 18,000 adults about their history of exposure to what they called ACEs. Those include, and you can see here, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, parental mental illness, substance dependence, incarceration, parental separation or divorce, or domestic violence. And what they found was dramatic. Two things. Number one, ACEs are incredibly common. I took the ACEs test yesterday just to see what it was like. 67% of the population had at least one ACE score, and 1 in 8 had 4 or more ACEs. The second thing they found was that there was a response relationship between ACEs and health outcomes. The higher your ACE score, the worse your health. In other words, childhood trauma can make you sick for your whole life. So this is interesting here because you can see some of what they ultimately learned. At 2.5 times the risk for hepatitis, 4.5 times the risk for depression, that giant number for the relative risk of suicidality. ACE scores are an assessment of threat, and these are scientifically proven numbers. And the fact that we have 3.5 times the risk of ischemic heart disease, which is the #1 killer in the United States, is astounding to me. And yet, there is not a standard evaluation or something that is done in a doctor's office to really assess this every time a child comes through, which has been a goal for many organizations over the 30 years that this has existed. Sometimes it's caught too late. Sometimes we can catch it, but after the child has already suffered for a couple of years. The ACEs report helped many people understand how better exposure to early adversity affects the growing bodies and brains of children. There are real neurological reasons why folks exposed to high doses of adversity are more likely to engage in high-risk behavior. So maybe they aren't suffering from something along the lines of ischemic heart disease or cancer. But it's important to know that even if someone doesn't engage in high-risk behaviors like alcohol, drugs, promiscuity, those sort of things, they are still more likely to develop heart disease or cancer. And the reason for this has to do with the brain's and body's stress response system. It's a system that governs what we've all heard of. It's our fight or flight response. So let's talk about how that works. Imagine you're walking in the woods and you see a bear. Immediately, your hypothalamus sends a signal to your pituitary gland. It sends a signal to your adrenal gland, and it screams, release stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. So the heart starts to pound and your pupils dilate and your airways open up, and you are ready to fight that bear or run from the bear. And that's great if you're in the woods and there's a bear. But that's not always the case. The problem is what happens when the bear comes home every night and this system is activated over and over and over again. And it goes from being life-saving to health damaging. Children are especially sensitive to this repeated stress activation because their brains and bodies are just developing. They're just growing. High doses of adversity not only affect brain structure and function, they affect, again, the developing immune system, developing hormonal systems, and the way our DNA is read and transcribed. So I'm going to share a difficult story with you about a child whose ACEs assessment was off the charts. And it was a child that we saw at the center. And we hold confidentiality very dear. So this is a variation of what happened with many details removed. And I'm going to say it's a story of Joey, who was first seen by our Safe from the Start specialist around the age of 5. Prior to receiving care, Joey's mother abandoned him, and he was left to be tended to by his mother's friend, who happened to be a perpetrator and ultimately sexually abused this child. When that was discovered, Joey was sent to live with his grandparents, which seemed to suit him very well. And he was particularly close to his grandfather. However, his grandfather suffered from major bouts of depression, and he took his own life. Left alone to live with his grandmother, fortunately, Grandma was resilient, and she was absolutely resolved to find some help for this child. They came to the Center for Prevention of Abuse and made a soft landing at the center at the Safe from the Start program. The trauma that Joey had experienced by this time was probably far more than any of us can imagine. Though through various kinds of play therapy, which is interesting to a lot of people that's the type of therapy that we perform with children. Through various types of play therapy, Joey was able to name his emotions. He was able to better process what happened to him. And Joey remained in therapy for many years. This was before I came to the center. And that often happens. And that the clinical staff that we have sees children in therapy at our facilities, but we also see children in the community, whether it be at school, but sometimes a community organization. And we have conducted therapy in partnership with organizations like CASA and the Carver Center and Neighborhood House. And we conduct therapy for as long as it's needed. It's not a one and done sort of thing. It is very important that we continue to aid children of all ages through their trauma in a variety of ways. It can be direct services like emergency shelter with their parents or their guardian. It can be assessments, it can be support services, or it can be that in-depth restorative care with one of our master's level therapists. Not only does the Center for Prevention of Abuse's team work to help the child identify and express their feelings and process what's happened to them, we also enhance the parents' ability to be safe and provide a secure and reliable environment for their children. Affected children need holistic interventions. And when we educate parents about the importance of ACEs and toxic stress, it matters. The lessons we provide are about treating trauma with the same seriousness as you do when you teach your child to look both ways when you cross the street. It's just that dangerous. Safe from the Start is also about coalition building and bringing public awareness. The Center for Prevention of Abuse's Safe from the Start program has a large coalition of local providers. We typically have 60 providers on this call, places where a child might land and there's something recognized that needs to be furthered. So these providers have the relationship with us so that they know that they can bring someone to the Safe from the Start program when needed. These group of superheroes from our agency that provide the services to this program meet with these other providers to share stories and best practices and to create really important relationships. It's always worth noting that all the work that we do at the Center for Prevention of Abuse for survivors is 100% free of charge and 100% confidential. So we have long said, and I love these taglines, we are here even when it's hard to talk. And we don't put a price on healing. So I'm going to wrap up here for just a second and give you the opportunity to ask some questions. So I'd be remiss if I did not give an appropriate shout out, because I am not a clinician. My background is in marketing and public relations, but I absorb information well when I know how important it is. And I can't crack you open and heal the tender parts of you, but we have people that do that and do it every day. And it's such hard work. So big shout out to Sarah Runyon, who is our clinical director at the Center for Prevention of Abuse. She's remarkable, has expanded the program to the point where we are out of space. But we have that type of need. We started to get a waiting list, and it's not appropriate to have a waiting list for people in trauma. And I can tell you in our sexual assault therapy, 48% of the people that we saw and see in therapy are children. So we've been able to grow that department to the point where we're able to see people as quickly as they're needed. And Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who is a cool woman. She's now the Surgeon General for the state of California, but she is the founder of the Story of the Bear, which was really eye-opening for me. And I hope that it helped some of you see the value of what causing toxic stress to a child does. But she is remarkable. She's also the author of a couple of really interesting books. One of them is called What's in the Well? And she often speaks to the fact that when she was in medical school, she was taught that if you see 100 children and 99 of them, and they all drink from the same well, and 99 of them develop stomach issues and diarrhea, you can prescribe dose after dose after dose of antibiotics, or you can walk over to that well and say, what the hell is in here? So it's discovering root cause, like the ACEs report did, that enables providers, well-meaning providers, to provide the care that's absolutely necessary. It's also important to mention the CDC because they were one of the founders of the ACEs report, and they still house a lot of the important information today that people use. And that's the ACEs test that I looked at yesterday. It's very interesting. It's very easy, but it's an assessment, a real assessment on lethality. And we do that for people who are perpetrators. We test their lethality to determine the type of threat that they might be. So why don't we test more regularly for children to see what dangers they might be heading into? So this is a work in progress. We are preparing to do an awareness campaign for Safe from the Start. And we're going to have billboards in zip codes of 61605 and 61603, where you see so many of the shootings that are happening now. And the basic message that we're talking about right now is, if it scared you, it scared them too. And we can help. And that's what we want. We want people to call us so we can help provide the care, and not only to the children again, but to their siblings and to their caregivers as well. And we want you to stay up to date with the Center for Prevention of Abuse. I thought I was going to end on a much more positive note. The positive aspect is that there is a problem, but we're doing something about it. And where there are so many agencies in the community, like Neighborhood House, who care for people that come and never are able to speak what they need, but they help discover. They help that discovery, and then they help provide. So stay in touch with us. Share our social media if you're inclined, and reach out to us if you know somebody that needs help. We are delighted to be of service, and hope to be around for another 50 years or so. So happy to answer any questions you might have about the agency, about me, about, yes.
How can we help you as an organization and as volunteers?
So Rotary North has been a tremendous help for us. You're wonderful partners because the Center for Prevention of Abuse received the Community Impact Grant a few years ago. And care kits were created, and you also sponsored our 5K during Sexual Assault Awareness Month. That matters. Having an organization as esteemed as Rotary say that the Center for Prevention of Abuse is worthy makes a difference. We always covet monetary donations because they are so important. It's the gas that makes our car go. And again, our services are free and confidential. So how do they get funded? We are funded by a lot of grants, but we're also funded by a very generous community that knows the value of making sure that their friends, their neighbors, their colleagues, their coworkers are all well cared for. 91 cents of every dollar we raise. That's big. If you look at our 990, you'll see it. 91 cents of every dollar we raise goes directly to care for clients. 9 cents goes to indirect services. So that's what you might consider overhead. So are we a good investment? Yes, we're an investment in the community. We're an investment in people. So monetary donations, but we also have right now an Amazon wish list that we've had a lot of people help fulfill. We received the Impact Central Illinois grant to help make our shelter kitchen in Peoria accessible. And it's just finished, but we needed garbage bags and paper towels and paper towel holders and garbage cans. And there's still some things on that wish list, but we also take donations of clothing. We take donations of house goods because we have apartments and we help people gain their independence. And we're always looking for ways to help them do that. So thank you for asking that. And we do have volunteer opportunities. They're different. We have at-will volunteers, so helping us sell ducks for the duck race, purchasing something for the kitchen, helping maybe stuff some envelopes. But then we also have direct service volunteers, which is a very deep commitment and a lot of training that goes into it. Those are the folks that work directly with clients. Yes, Amazon wish list, and you can access that through our Facebook, a couple of different posts, or our website.
So thank you very much for being with us today. It's an emotional topic for me, and I think most people. Thank you for being able to hang in there.
Thank you.
So my question is, how do you get help for people? And it relates to a neighbor of mine. We used to go out to dinner with him and his wife, and after an hour or so of drinking, he would be mumbling. And sooner or later would come up that abuse was involved as a child. And it was hard to understand him, but he was being abused and his mother was being abused. And 2 weeks ago, he took his life on the back patio, a couple of houses from us. So my question is, how do you give people help?
I am very sorry for that tragedy. And it is a tragedy that can and does result from what happens to somebody early in their life. At the Center for Prevention of Abuse, we are client-centered. Now, we say that all the time, but what does that mean? That means that people get to make their own choices. And when somebody comes to visit, and perhaps they've come because they're fleeing a abusive situation and they come to one of our shelters. Sometimes people stay for an hour because they need respite. Sometimes people stay for 6 weeks. But on average, somebody returns to that abusive situation 7 to 8 times before they finally reckon with it. And reckoning with it can mean a lot of different things. And such as the tragedy of your friend and neighbor. And what we do as being client-centered in our organization is we educate people as best we can, because many don't realize that they have options. Many people who are abused are isolated, so they don't realize that there are people who care and are there for them. And our message is always, we believe you and we're here for you. But there is no or very little success in trying to force someone into receiving the care that they so desperately need. But the message that I always encourage people is, I'm here for you and I believe you. But I care about you, and here's what I know, and here are some people that can help you. And sometimes that's as far as driving them to the front door. If somebody is that close to you, that it is that's a hard answer. There's no good answer for that, other than being a good friend and being there for them and hearing them. You heard what he said, but you can't save everybody, even though we try. You know, that crisis hotline that I mentioned is 1-800-559-SAFE. And that is a lifesaver in many ways, because if somebody is awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, they might be inclined to call and have a conversation with somebody. And sometimes that conversation is not a one and done. Sometimes they call 5, 6, 7 times before they finally decide that they want to talk to somebody. So the greater resource that we can be and the more that we can be available, I think the better off the community is going to be. So I implore you to know the crisis hotline, carry it with you. You've got brochures on your table, and just know that we're available. I'm not asking you to sing our song every day, but know the song in case somebody needs to hear it. So if there's no other questions, thank you so much. Great looking at you.